So if you've been around spirituality, New Age spirituality, or in kind of the mindfulness world, you've most definitely come across this idea of being present and accepting the present moment. Um, I wanted to clarify, I was having a conversation in my group, my Course in Miracles group, and um, someone, one of the members was on and was talking about acceptance. And we got into a conversation about acceptance. And I thought what came from that was worth sharing. So I wanted to create this video. So accepting the present moment. Okay, about 15 years ago, I read Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now. And in that book, there's so much about being present. Fact of the matter is, most of us, I mean, especially the kind of people that can have the time and money to go listen to someone talk about being present, most of those people actually have pretty good present moments, is what I'll call them. So for the majority of these people, and I would say probably a lot of people in the world, the present moment is actually okay. It's quite nice. And most people's issues revolve around anticipation of the future or regret of the past. So the idea with this whole thing of accepting the present moment, accepting what is like accepting what's happening around you, being present, not thinking so much of the future or thinking so much of the past. And yeah, just accepting this moment. And that's kind of like the where the term acceptance kind of fits into all this. You're accepting the present moment, you're accepting what's around you, you're accepting all these, everything, your situations, your circumstances, you know, the weather, your emotional state, all this stuff you're accepting. Now, before I get too deep into this, I want to preface by saying, like, it's not that doesn't have any value whatsoever. It definitely does, because if you're resisting, if you're, let's say, angry, let's say I have some situation that isn't the most convenient in the world, and I'm resisting it, I'm angry at it, I'm trying to change it, that creates conflict in myself. And obviously, if that's the case, that accepting that situation will relieve me to a certain extent. So I'm not creating that so much resistance and conflict within myself. The issue, though, is when the present moment isn't nice. So, as an example, like physical pain might be an example of like, let's say, a present moment that kind of sucks. And I think for a lot of people, this whole idea of accept the present moment, accept what is, accept what's happening, it's a pretty concept until you have a present moment that actually sucks. And when you have a present moment that actually sucks, you kind of quickly learn that, oh, it's not really, being present isn't really like so peaceful as it's touted. And that was my personal experience too, having like listened to Eckhart Tolle, I haven't really been into the being present stuff, then having a present moment that really sucked and being like, okay. And, you know, and then you go into this kind of the philosophical thing of, well, you know, life has ups and downs and you have to accept the downs with the ups. And so if you're truly accepting the pain of things, then you're not really suffering, which I just don't agree with. And I'll kind of explain why from the Course in Miracles standpoint. So to understand where the Course comes from, this idea of acceptance, and also the idea of the holy instant, which is something I might get into a bit later, but a lot of people use the term like present moment and the holy instant interchangeably, as if like any present moment is actually like a holy instant because it is the only instant or something like this. Again, that I don't think that's the Course's, I think that's like a misunderstanding of the term. But if I have time, I'll go into that. But for the time being, when the Course talks about accepting, it's actually talking about accepting ideas that represent the truth of who you are and who I am and who we are. So in order to understand this and understand how this ties into the kind of limitations of what I just explained before about this, the sort of the New Age acceptance, you have to get an idea of how this present moment comes into being. So according to the Course, all form is an effect. So the cause is the mind and the effect is the form. The cause is the ideas and the effect is the result of those ideas. So I like to think of it as a seed. So if you have a seed or a kernel, like one little idea, one idea that you give yourself to, that you believe, that you accept. When you accept that idea gets pushed out and appears as a world that then seems to confront you from the outside. That's always happening. That's always happening. In the Course it talks about how that is the only causation, worldly causation that there is from mind to the outside, from the inside to the outside, the inside of the mind, and then the external reality, which isn't really external at all. It talks about how the senses don't pick up information, they translate. So they translate your ideas into meaningful form, and that we call reality. That's what, I mean, the Course has kind of a different definition of reality, which refers to a higher reality, which is basically created in kind of this pure peace, eternal peace, yada, yada, yada. But in terms of what we call reality, which is, let's say, the physical world, this physical present moment is actually not constructed of form and matter and physicality. It's actually constructed of ideas. And beneath all these ideas is generally a center idea. One idea from which all the other ideas spring from, which appear as form and as physicality, certain different forms and different physical manifestations, you could say, or results. So if you accept a different idea, in this case, if you accept, for example, the idea of innocence versus the idea of guilt, the result will be a different present moment. So any form of suffering is the result of the initial kernel of guilt. So down to specifics, if you're physically sick, if there's any form of pain, of suffering, of anything that isn't perfect peace, that doesn't represent perfect peace and evoke gratitude, that is a result or an effect of an internal cause, which is the belief in guilt, or the acceptance of guilt. So the acceptance of an idea results in a present moment experience, sensory experience, where that idea becomes pushed out and manifested in specifics. And so if you change your idea, if you change what you believe in or what you accept, that your present moment will change, because the present moment is a sensory experience, and the sensory experience comes from the mind. So to accept the present moment, let's say I use the example of back pain. Let's say you have back pain. If you take that back pain and you unravel it, and you look to see where it's coming from, the world will tell you maybe it's your diet, maybe you pull your back because of it's your age, and obviously there is all these, medication or interventions to help with that. But the Course is looking at a deeper cause, and that deeper cause happens in the mind. And this deeper cause has to be acknowledged in order for there to be any kind of healing. So to accept innocence is like kind of planting that seed in your mind that reverses or erases all of the effects of the other seed, which is the seed of guilt. So everything comes from the inside out, from the mind outward. Everything we feel, see, experience through our senses. So if the present moment, if my back pain comes fundamentally from what I'm accepting, from the guilt that I'm accepting in my mind, then if I accept the back pain, I'm just creating a loop. I'm creating a feedback loop where my initial acceptance of guilt generates a form, an expression of pain and suffering, because that's the result of guilt. And then if I accept that as like, it is what it is the fact of the matter, and I just need to accept it. Well, what I'm really doing is I'm passively condoning the acceptance of the guilt that's in my mind that generated that form in the first place. So acceptance in the Course is actually acceptance of an idea. It's not acceptance of the present moment circumstances. It's not acceptance of what's happening, what's currently happening in this world, in the senses. That's not what it is. What you're accepting is an idea. And ideas, when accepted, bring results. They generate effects. And if you accept an idea that's true, according to the Course, then you will experience the results of that truth, both in your senses and via a feeling. So if I accept that I am as God created me, and I accept that idea, it's hard to describe what acceptance really is, but to believe something, to have faith in it, to give yourself, to give your mind, your essence, to accept. You accept that idea. I am as God created me. That idea, not the words, by the way. If you don't really know what that idea represents, I recommend reading one of the many lessons entitled I Am as God Created Me. Read one of those lessons, and you'll have an idea as to the depth that idea really contains. Because the words are nothing. Words are words. It's the meaning that really matters. But if I accept that idea, I know what it means and I accept the meaning. I take that on board and I say, this is true. I'm giving myself to this idea because it's true. I accept this as fact. Your acceptance of that idea is more powerful than gravity. It's more powerful than the sun. Because your mind is before the world. So your acceptance is what generates the world. So your acceptance of a different idea will bring you a different present moment. And that's the kind of acceptance that the Course is talking about.